A lone gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory as Willow Foster clutched her swollen belly and winced in pain, knowing her time had come at the worst possible moment. The year was 1876, and Willow found herself miles from the nearest town of Rawlins, trapped in her modest homestead as a summer storm raged outside, washing away any hope of reaching a midwife before her baby arrived. Willow had been alone since her husband Daniel's death 3 months prior. A mining accident had claimed his life, leaving her to manage their small ranch and prepare for the birth of their child by herself. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and most folks had headed into town for supplies before the storm hit. She'd planned to travel to her sister's home in Rawlins the following week, but the baby had other ideas. Another contraction gripped her body, stronger than the last. Willow braced herself against the rough-hewn table, breathing heavily as sweat beaded on her forehead. Through the howling wind, she heard an unexpected sound, hoofbeats approaching her cabin. Wade Zimmerman had been riding hard since dawn, trying to outrun both the storm and his past. At 30 years old, he'd spent the last decade drifting across the Western Territories, taking work where he could find it and never staying in one place long enough to put down roots. His latest job had ended abruptly when the cattle drive reached Cheyenne, and he'd decided to head northwest, hearing of ranch work near Rawlins. The storm had caught him by surprise, the skies opening up with a vengeance that left him soaked to the bone within minutes. When he spotted a small cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, he'd made a decision that would change the course of his life forever. Wade dismounted from his drenched horse, leading the animal to the small covered porch. He removed his hat, water cascading from the brim, and knocked firmly on the door. "Hello? Anyone home? I got caught in the storm and could use some shelter until it passes," he called out, his voice nearly drowned by a crack of thunder. Inside, Willow debated whether to answer. A woman alone had reason to be cautious, especially with a stranger at her door during a storm. But another contraction, more powerful than the last two, made her decision for her. She needed help, and Providence had sent someone to her door. "Come in," she managed to call out between labored breaths. Wade pushed open the door, stepping into the warmth of the cabin. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, taking in the modest but well-kept interior before landing on the young woman braced against the table, her face contorted in pain, her dress strained across her very pregnant belly. "Madam, are you all right?" he asked, though the answer was plainly obvious. Willow looked up, her blue eyes meeting his hazel ones. "The baby's coming," she gasped. "There's no one." Another contraction cut off her words, and she groaned, clutching the table tighter. Wade froze momentarily, taking in the situation. He'd helped deliver foals and calves on ranches, but never a human baby. Yet there was clearly no one else around, and this woman needed help desperately. "I'm Wade Zimmerman, madam," he said, quickly removing his wet coat and rolling up his sleeves. "I can't say I know much about delivering babies, but I won't leave you alone." Willow nodded gratefully, her knuckles white as she gripped the table. "Willow Foster. My husband's gone. Mining accident. I wasn't expecting the baby for another 2 weeks." Wade gently took her arm. "Let's get you somewhere more comfortable, Mrs. Foster. The bed would be best, I reckon." He helped her to the small bedroom off the main living area, where a neatly made bed waited. As another contraction hit, Willow cried out, and Wade realized he was now responsible for 2 lives. The thought terrified him, but he kept his expression calm for her sake. "I need to boil water and find clean cloths," he said, recalling what little he knew about childbirth from overhearing women talk on the ranches where he'd worked. "There's a kettle on the stove," Willow managed between breaths. cloths in the trunk at the foot of the bed. For the next hour, Wade worked methodically, stoking the fire, boiling water, and gathering supplies while Willow's contractions grew closer together. He'd never stayed in one place when things got complicated, had never taken responsibility for anyone but himself. Yet here he was, preparing to help a stranger bring a new life into the world. "How far apart are the pains coming?" he asked, placing a cool cloth on her forehead. "Just a few minutes now," Willow whispered, her face flushed. "It's happening too fast. First babies aren't supposed to come this quick." Wade nodded, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. "You're doing fine, Mrs. Foster. I'll be right here with you." As night fell outside and the storm continued its assault on the little cabin, Willow's labor intensified. Wade stayed beside her, offering water, wiping her brow, and murmuring encouragements that seemed inadequate in the face of her pain. "I'm scared," she admitted during a brief respite between contractions. "I never thought I'd be doing this alone." Wade took her hand, surprised at how natural the gesture felt. "You're not alone, Mrs. Foster. I'm here." Those simple words seemed to give her strength. Willow squeezed his hand, and for a moment their eyes met in understanding. Then another contraction took hold and she cried out, bearing down instinctively. "I think it's time," she gasped. "The baby's coming now." Wade positioned himself at the foot of the bed, heart pounding. "I can see the head," he announced, amazed. "You need to push when the next pain comes." Willow nodded, gathering her strength. When the next contraction hit, she pushed with all her might, her cry of pain filling the small room. Wade coached her, drawing on distant memories of a ranch hand's wife giving birth years ago. "Again," he urged when the next contraction came. "You're doing wonderfully." 3 more pushes, and suddenly the baby's head was fully visible. "One more big push, Mrs. Foster." With a final, tremendous effort, Willow pushed, and the baby slid into Wade's waiting hands, a squirming, slippery miracle that let out a healthy cry almost immediately. "It's a boy," Wade announced, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. "A strong, healthy boy." Tears streamed down Willow's face as Wade carefully cleaned the baby with warm water and wrapped him in a clean blanket before placing him in her arms. The sight of mother and child together stirred something profound in him, a longing for connection he'd spent years denying. "Thank you," Willow whispered, looking up from her son's face to the stranger who had delivered him. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Wade shook his head. "Just happened to be in the right place at the right time, madam." "Willow," she corrected gently. "Please call me Willow." "Willow," he repeated, liking the sound of it on his lips. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the small cabin, a different kind of storm had begun in Wade Zimmerman's heart, one that would prove far more life-changing than any Wyoming thunderstorm. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having moved eastward during the night. Wade had slept little, checking on Willow and the baby throughout the dark hours, marveling at how quickly his life had changed direction in a single evening. He prepared a simple breakfast of coffee and biscuits, bringing it to Willow, who was nursing her newborn son in bed. "How are you feeling this morning?" he asked, setting the tray beside her. "Tired," she admitted with a small smile, "but happy. He's perfect, isn't he?" Wade looked at the tiny infant with his shock of dark hair and pink cheeks. "He certainly is. Have you thought of a name for him?" Willow nodded. "Daniel, after his father, Daniel James Foster." "A fine name," Wade said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "I should head into Rawlins today. Let the doctor know you've had the baby. He should come check on you both as soon as possible." A flash of alarm crossed Willow's face. "You're leaving?" Wade hadn't considered staying beyond making sure she had proper medical attention. The thought of lingering made him uneasy, not because he wanted to go, but because he was surprised by how much he wanted to stay. "I don't want to impose," he said carefully. "You've been through a lot and you need your rest." Willow shifted the baby to her shoulder, patting his back gently. "Mr. Zimmerman, I won't pretend I'm not still in a difficult position. I have a ranch to run, animals to tend to, and now a newborn to care for. I was planning to stay with my sister in town until I recovered, but I can't travel yet." Wade understood what she was asking without her having to say it directly. "I could stay a few days," he offered. "Help with the chores, make sure you have what you need until you're strong enough to travel." Relief flooded her face. "I would be very grateful. And I can pay you for your work, of course." "No need for payment," Wade said quickly. "Consider it neighborly assistance." Willow nodded, though he could see she wasn't entirely comfortable accepting charity. Her independent spirit was something he admired already. "I'll still ride into town today," he said. "Get the doctor to come check on you and I can pick up any supplies you need." "There's money in the tin on the mantel," Willow told him, "and a list of supplies I was planning to get next week in my sewing basket." Wade nodded, finishing his coffee. "I'll take care of it. You focus on resting and taking care of young Daniel there." He left shortly after, riding Willow's wagon into Rawlins. The town was bustling despite the previous night's storm, with cowboys, miners, and settlers going about their business along the muddy Main Street. Wade hitched the wagon outside the doctor's office and went inside, where a gray-haired man was organizing bottles on a shelf. "Can I help you?" the doctor asked, turning at the sound of the bell above the door. "I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Willow Foster," Wade explained. "She had her baby last night during the storm, a boy. Both seem to be doing well, but she needs someone to check on them." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Daniel Foster's widow. I was planning to visit her next week before her confinement. The baby's early then, and you are?" "Wade Zimmerman." "I was caught in the storm and happened to stop at her place when she went into labor." The doctor studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll ride out this afternoon. Where's her sister, Margaret? I thought Willow was going to stay with her." "I don't know anything about that," Wade admitted. "Mrs. Foster was alone when I arrived." The doctor frowned. "Margaret must not have gotten word yet about Daniel's passing. She lives over in South Dakota now, married a banker from Deadwood last year. I'll ask my wife to send a telegram." Wade nodded, relieved that Willow would have family support eventually. "Mrs. Foster gave me a list of supplies she needs. I'll get those and head back to let her know you're coming." After purchasing the items on Willow's list, and adding a few extras he thought might be useful for a new mother, Wade drove the wagon back to the Foster homestead. As he approached, he noticed how vulnerable the small ranch looked: a modest cabin, a barn in need of repair, a vegetable garden that needed tending, and a small corral with 2 horses and a milk cow. Daniel Foster had clearly been working hard to build something for his family before his untimely death, but there was much left unfinished. Wade felt a tug of responsibility that surprised him. He'd spent years avoiding entanglements, yet here he was, already planning which repairs to tackle first. Inside the cabin, he found Willow dozing in a rocking chair with the baby asleep on her chest. The scene stirred something in him, a yearning for the kind of peaceful domesticity he'd never allowed himself to want. She opened her eyes as he entered, offering a tired smile. "You're back. Did you find the doctor?" "He's coming this afternoon," Wade confirmed, setting down the supplies. "I got everything on your list and some extra coffee. Figured you might need it in the coming days." "Thank you." Her gratitude was evident in her voice. "I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." Wade busied himself unpacking the supplies to hide his discomfort with her thanks. "Nothing to repay. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Willow said softly, adjusting the sleeping infant. Not everyone would have stayed. Not everyone would have known what to do. You saved us, Mr. Zimmerman. Wade, he corrected, meeting her eyes briefly. If I'm going to be around for a few days, you might as well use my given name. She smiled, and Wade noticed how it transformed her face, bringing warmth to features strained by recent grief and the rigors of childbirth. Willow Foster was beautiful in a natural, unassuming way that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. Wade, then, she agreed. And while you're here, I should tell you about the ranch. There's not much livestock, just the milk cow, Bess, and 2 horses. The garden needs tending, and there's a leak in the barn roof that Daniel was planning to fix before. She trailed off, her smile fading. Wade nodded, grateful for the practical focus. I'll see to it. You just concentrate on getting your strength back and caring for little Daniel. The doctor arrived mid-afternoon, examining both mother and child thoroughly before pronouncing them both healthy. The boy's a bit small, being early, but his lungs are strong, he told Willow. You did well, especially under the circumstances. I had help, Willow said, glancing at Wade, who stood awkwardly by the door. The doctor followed her gaze. Yes, quite fortunate Mr. Zimmerman happened along. Now, I've sent word to your sister in Deadwood. It may take her some time to arrange affairs and travel here. Will you be all right in the meantime? Mr. Zimmerman has kindly offered to help around the ranch for a few days, Willow explained. And I should be able to manage after that until Margaret arrives. The doctor didn't look entirely convinced but nodded. I'll return in 3 days to check your progress. Send for me sooner if you notice any fever or excessive bleeding. After the doctor left, Wade set about doing the evening chores, milking the cow, feeding the horses, and making sure the chicken coop was secure. By the time he returned to the cabin, Willow had prepared a simple supper using some of the supplies he'd brought from town. You shouldn't be up cooking, he admonished gently. The doctor said you need rest, Willow shrugged. I've never been good at sitting still. Besides, you've been working all day. Least I could do was prepare a meal. They ate together at the small table, the baby sleeping in a cradle that Wade suspected Daniel Foster had made himself. The conversation was tentative at first, but soon flowed more naturally as they discovered shared experiences and perspectives. How long have you been in Wyoming Territory? Willow asked, sipping her tea. Off and on for about 3 years, Wade answered. I've worked ranches from Texas to Montana, never staying in one place too long. What keeps you moving? Her question was direct but not prying. Wade considered how to answer. Habit, mostly. Started drifting after the war and never really stopped. You fought in the war between the states. Willow looked surprised, caught the tail end of it. Joined up in '64 when I was barely 18. Union side. He rarely spoke of those days, but something about Willow's open expression encouraged honesty. My father and older brother fought too, she said quietly. Father came home. Brother didn't. Wade nodded, understanding the unspoken grief. And you, how did you end up here? Willow's expression softened. Daniel and I married in Iowa 3 years ago. He had dreams of building something of our own in the West. We saved every penny for 2 years to buy this land. Moved here last spring. It's good land, Wade observed. Good water source, decent grazing. Daniel had plans to expand, she said, a shadow crossing her face. He wanted a proper ranch eventually, 50 head of cattle, more horses. He was working the mine to save money for livestock when there was a cave-in. Wade watched her struggle with the memory, admiring her composure. I'm sorry for your loss, Willow. She met his eyes. Thank you, it's been difficult, but now I have his son. A piece of Daniel lives on. Later that night, after Willow had retired to her bedroom with the baby, Wade made himself comfortable on a bedroll near the fireplace. As he stared at the dying embers, He found himself contemplating a future very different from the rootless existence he'd known for the past decade. The thought both terrified and enticed him. Days passed, falling into a comfortable rhythm. Wade repaired the leak in the barn roof, mended fences, tended the garden, and cared for the livestock. Willow regained her strength gradually, spending more time up and about, cooking meals and caring for baby Daniel, who grew stronger daily. The doctor returned as promised and was pleased with their progress. "You're healing well," he told Willow, "and the boy is thriving. You've done a remarkable job, Mrs. Foster." "We've had help," Willow said, glancing at Wade, who was whittling a small wooden horse by the fire. The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed. Well, I've had another letter from your sister. She and her husband plan to arrive in about 2 weeks. They're arranging for a wagon and supplies for the journey from Deadwood." Wade felt an unexpected pang at this news. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, Willow would have her family to support her, and his presence would no longer be necessary. The thought left him strangely hollow. After the doctor departed, Willow found Wade in the barn, brushing down one of the horses with more vigor than was strictly needed. "Is everything all right?" she asked, Daniel cradled in her arms. Wade forced a smile. "Just fine. That mare enjoys a good brushing." Willow wasn't fooled. "Wade, I know you've stayed longer than you planned. If you need to move on, I understand. The doctor says Margaret will be here soon." "Do you want me to leave?" The question came out more abruptly than he intended. Willow's eyes widened. "No, no. Your help has been invaluable, and frankly, I've enjoyed the company." A blush colored her cheeks at this admission. Wade set down the brush, turning to face her fully. "I've enjoyed it too, more than I expected to." Something passed between them then, an understanding that their connection had grown beyond that of a good Samaritan helping a woman in distress. "I was thinking," Wade said carefully, "your husband had plans for expanding this place." "I know something about ranching. I could stay on, help you get established before winter comes." "As an employee, of course," he added hastily. Hope flickered in Willow's eyes. "You do that, stay through the winter, if you'll have me," Wade said. "This is good land, like I said. Be ashamed to let it go to waste when it could support a proper herd." Willow studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "My sister will expect me to return to Iowa with her, to live with her and her husband in Deadwood until I decide what to do with the ranch." Wade's heart sank. "That makes sense. You have family there, support for you and the boy. But this is my home now," Willow continued, her voice strengthening. "Daniel and I built this place together. His dreams are here, our dreams." "What are you saying?" Wade asked, hardly daring to hope. "I'm saying I want to stay," Willow declared. "Build what Daniel and I started, and I would be grateful for your help, Wade, not just as an employee but as—" She hesitated. "A partner," Wade suggested, his pulse quickening. "Yes," she nodded, relief evident in her expression. "A partner." The word hung between them, carrying meanings neither was ready to fully acknowledge. But it was a commitment to something beyond the immediate present. "Then it's settled," Wade said, feeling as though a weight had lifted from his shoulders. "I'll stay on as your ranch partner. We'll build this place up together." Willow smiled, and in that moment, Wade knew he'd made the right decision for the first time in years. The arrival of Margaret and her husband Edward 2 weeks later brought a flurry of activity to the quiet ranch. Margaret, a taller, more outspoken version of Willow, initially viewed Wade with suspicion. "And you just happened to be passing by during a storm when my sister went into labor?" she questioned during their first dinner together, her tone making it clear she found the coincidence convenient. "Margaret," Willow chided, "Wade saved my life and Daniel's. He's been nothing but helpful and respectful." Edward, a quiet man with shrewd eyes, studied Wade thoughtfully. "You planning to stay on permanently then, Zimmerman?" "That's the arrangement," Wade confirmed, meeting the banker's gaze steadily. "Mrs. Foster and I have agreed to a partnership to build up the ranch. She has the land and the vision. I have the experience and the labor." "And what exactly do you get out of this arrangement?" Margaret pressed. Wade considered his answer carefully. "A chance to put down roots, build something meaningful." His sincerity must have been evident because Margaret's expression softened slightly. "Well, I suppose Willow could use the help, but I still think you should consider returning to Iowa with us, sister. At least until the boy is older." "This is my home now, Margaret," Willow said firmly. "Daniel's home. I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision." After several days of similar conversations, Margaret and Edward finally accepted Willow's determination to remain on the ranch. Before departing, Edward took Wade aside for a private word. "I've made inquiries about you in town," the banker admitted without preamble. Wade tensed but said nothing. "Folks speak well of you," Edward continued. "Say you've been honest in your dealings and worked hard wherever you've been employed." "I've always tried to be," Wade acknowledged. Edward nodded. "Willow is precious to us. She's been through enough grief already. Don't add to it." Wade understood the warning. "I have no intention of causing Mrs. Foster any distress. My only aim is to help her succeed here." "See that it stays that way," Edward said, then extended his hand. "For what it's worth, I think you've made a sensible partnership. The ranch has potential, and Willow has more grit than most men I know." Wade shook the banker's hand, feeling as though he'd passed some sort of test. "That she does." After Margaret and Edward's departure, the ranch settled into a new routine. Wade and Willow worked side by side during the days, caring for the livestock, tending crops, and making improvements to the property. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Willow nursing Daniel while they discussed plans for the ranch's future. "If we can afford 10 head of cattle before winter, we could have a decent start on a herd by next spring," Wade suggested one evening, sketching figures in a ledger. Willow leaned over to study his calculations, her closeness sending a flutter through Wade's chest. "Where would we get the money?" "I've got some savings," Wade admitted. "And there's a rancher east of town looking to reduce his herd before winter. Might get a fair price." Willow looked up at him, surprised. "You'd invest your own money in this place? It's our partnership, isn't it?" Wade said simply. "Besides, it's a sound investment. This land can support 3 times that number eventually." Willow's eyes shone with gratitude and something more, a growing affection that both thrilled and terrified Wade. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Wade Zimmerman." "You'd have managed," he said, trying to lighten the moment. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met, Willow Foster." She smiled, shifting Daniel to her shoulder. "Perhaps, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out." As autumn painted the surrounding hills with gold and crimson, Wade and Willow purchased their first small herd, 8 cows and a bull from the rancher east of Rawlins. They worked together to prepare for the coming winter, stocking provisions, reinforcing the barn, and ensuring adequate feed for the animals. Their partnership flourished, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. But as the days grew shorter and the nights colder, something else grew between them, an attraction neither had anticipated, but both increasingly acknowledged in silent glances and casual touches that lingered a moment too long. Wade found himself thinking of Willow constantly, her quiet strength, her gentle way with Daniel, the determination that drove her to master new ranch skills despite her city upbringing. He admired her resilience in the face of loss, and her willingness to fight for the future she and her late husband had dreamed of. For her part, Willow discovered dimensions to Wade that contradicted his drifter past. He was patient with the livestock, meticulous in his work, and surprisingly tender with baby Daniel. She watched his calloused hands cradle her son with the same care they showed mending a fence or doctoring an injured calf. One evening in late October, a cold snap brought the first snow of the season fat, wet flakes that melted upon landing but promised winter's imminent arrival. Wade had ridden to a neighboring ranch to help with a difficult calving, returning after dark to find Willow waiting anxiously by the window. "I was beginning to worry," she admitted as he stamped snow from his boots on the porch. "The weather turned so quickly." "McAllister's heifer had a rough time of it," Wade explained, hanging his coat by the fire to dry. "But mother and calf are doing fine now." Willow brought him a cup of hot coffee. "You're half frozen. Come sit by the fire." Wade accepted the coffee gratefully, their fingers brushing during the exchange. Neither pulled away immediately, the brief contact sending warmth through Wade that had nothing to do with the fire crackling nearby. "Daniel's asleep?" he asked, breaking the moment. Willow nodded, taking a seat across from him. "Has been for an hour. He's sleeping longer stretches now, thank goodness." Wade smiled, recalling the early weeks when the baby had woken hourly, leaving Willow exhausted. He'd done what he could to help, walking the fussing infant around the cabin in the pre-dawn hours, singing old trail songs in a low voice until the boy settled. "He's growing strong," Wade observed. "Takes after his mother that way." Willow looked down, a smile playing at her lips. "I see his father in him too. The same determined chin." Wade studied her face in the firelight, wondering if she still grieved deeply for Daniel Foster or if time had begun to ease that pain. He had no right to ask, no claim on her heart. Yet he couldn't deny the feelings that had taken root in his own. "Winter's coming early this year," he said instead, gesturing toward the window where snow continued to fall. "Are we ready?" Willow asked, practical as always. "We are," Wade assured her. "The barn's sound, hay's stored, and we've provisions enough to last till spring." Willow nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. "We've accomplished a lot in a short time." "You've accomplished a lot," Wade corrected. "This is your ranch, Willow. I'm just helping out." "It's our ranch now," she said quietly but firmly. "You've put your money, your labor, and your heart into this place, Wade. Don't diminish that." Her words touched him deeply. For so long he'd owned nothing, belonged nowhere. The idea that he now had a stake in something tangible, something with a future, was still hard to comprehend. "Thank you for saying that," he said simply. Willow stood, moving to the window to watch the falling snow. "I used to hate winter in Iowa, the endless cold, being trapped indoors for months. But here it feels different somehow." Wade joined her at the window, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "How so?" She turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "I'm not sure. Perhaps because this winter, for the first time, I'm not just enduring until spring. I'm building toward something." "We both are," Wade said softly. Their eyes met, and Wade saw in hers the same longing he felt, a desire for connection that transcended their business partnership. For a breathless moment he thought he might kiss her, might finally express the feelings that had been growing since that stormy night when he'd helped bring her son into the world. But the baby chose that moment to cry out from the bedroom, breaking the spell. Willow stepped back, her cheeks flushed. "I should check on him," she murmured. Wade nodded, letting her go. There would be time, he told himself, all winter to explore what was growing between them. For now, it was enough to know that she felt it too. The winter of 1876-77 proved to be one of the harshest in Wyoming Territory's history. Blizzards swept across the plains, piling snow in drifts taller than a man. Temperatures plunged so low that Willow's wash water froze solid in the basin overnight. The small ranch became an island in a sea of white, cut off from town for weeks at a time. Yet inside the snug cabin, a different kind of warmth flourished. Confined together by the relentless weather, Wade and Willow's relationship deepened. They worked in companionable silence during the days, Wade venturing out to care for the livestock no matter how bitter the cold, Willow keeping the cabin warm and welcoming, tending to Daniel who grew and thrived despite the harsh conditions. In the evenings, they talked for hours. Wade shared stories of his travels across the territories, of cattle drives and mining camps, of the characters he'd met along the way. Willow told him of her childhood in Iowa, her dreams of adventure that had led her to accept Daniel Foster's proposal and journey west. "Were you in love with him?" Wade asked one night, the question slipping out before he could reconsider. Willow looked up from her mending, surprised but not offended. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Not at first, perhaps. I admired his ambition, his kindness. The love grew with time." Wade nodded, understanding. "He must have been a good man." "He was," Willow confirmed. "He would have been a wonderful father." She paused, studying Wade's face in the lamplight. "What about you? Has there ever been someone you loved?" Wade stared into the fire, considering his answer. "Once, maybe, in Texas before the war. But I was young, and then the fighting started, and by the time it ended, everything had changed. I'd changed." "And since then," Willow pressed gently. Wade met her gaze, his heart pounding. "Since then, I've been running, until recently." The unspoken question hung between them. What had changed? But neither was ready to voice it directly, to risk the comfortable partnership they'd built. As December gave way to January, and January to February, their daily routine acquired a domestic harmony that felt increasingly like family. Wade found himself thinking less about the open road and more about permanence, about building something lasting on this patch of Wyoming soil. Daniel, now nearly 6 months old, had become attached to Wade, reaching for him with chubby hands and gurgling happily whenever the cowboy entered the room. Wade delighted in the boy's development, marveling at each new achievement: the first time he rolled over, his first tooth, his attempts to crawl. "He thinks you hung the moon," Willow observed one evening as Daniel babbled excitedly in Wade's lap. Wade tickled the baby's round belly, eliciting a peal of laughter. "Smart boy, gets that from his mama." Willow blushed, a response Wade found increasingly endearing. "You're good with him. Have you ever thought of having children of your own?" The question caught Wade off guard. "Can't say I gave it much consideration while drifting. Didn't seem fair to bring a child into that kind of life." "And now?" Willow asked, her voice carefully neutral. Wade looked down at Daniel, then back at Willow. "Now I think it might be the greatest adventure a man could undertake. With the right partner." The air between them seemed to thicken with possibility. Willow opened her mouth to respond, but a sudden gust of wind rattled the window, drawing their attention to the storm raging outside. "Sounds like another blizzard," Wade said, rising to check that the shutters were secure. "I'd better make sure the animals are bedded down proper for the night." By March, the worst of winter had passed, and the first hints of spring brought renewed activity to the ranch. The snow began to recede, revealing patches of brown earth that promised green growth to come. Wade and Willow ventured into Rawlins for supplies as soon as the roads cleared. Daniel bundled warmly between them in the wagon. The town had survived the harsh winter, though not without hardship. Several outlying homesteads had been abandoned, their owners driven away by the relentless cold and isolation. "You two fared better than most," observed the general store owner as he filled their order. "Heard you even kept your cattle alive through the worst of it." We were fortunate, Willow acknowledged. Mr. Zimmerman's experience proved invaluable. The storekeeper nodded approvingly. Wise decision, taking on a partner. Too many widows try to go it alone and end up selling out for pennies on the dollar. Wade noticed how Willow stiffened slightly at being referred to as a widow, though she didn't correct the man. It was, after all, the truth, but over the months, her identity had expanded beyond that limited label in both their minds. As they drove home, Daniel sleeping contentedly between them, Wade broached a subject he'd been considering for weeks. "Willow, I've been thinking about the future of the ranch." She glanced at him, curious. "What about it? With spring coming, we have decisions to make. If we're going to expand the herd significantly, we'll need more hands, especially come branding and roundup time." Willow nodded. "I've been thinking the same. The money Edward invested will cover a few more head, but hiring help. I know some good men from my time with the Box T outfit," Wade suggested. "Reliable cowboys who might sign on for a season at least." "That would mean building a bunkhouse," Willow mused, "and a larger corral. And officially naming the ranch," Wade added. "Can't hire men to work for a place with no name." This brought a smile to Willow's face. "I hadn't thought of that. What would you call it?" Wade considered for a moment. "It's your land, Willow, your choice." "Our land," she corrected gently, "and I'd like your input." Wade felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "How about the double F, Foster and—" He hesitated, almost saying Foster and Zimmerman before catching himself. "Foster Family Ranch." Willow's smile widened. "I like that. The double F, it has a good sound to it." They rode in companionable silence for a while, each lost in thoughts of the future. As the wagon crested a hill, their ranch came into view below the cabin with smoke curling from the chimney, the sturdy barn, the small herd of cattle grazing in the nearest pasture. It was modest compared to the sprawling operations further south, but to Wade it looked like heaven. "There's something else I've been meaning to discuss," he said finally, gathering his courage. "Something important." Willow turned to him, expression open and expectant. "What is it?" Wade took a deep breath. "I know we started as partners out of necessity. You needed help and I needed to stop running. But these past months, living and working alongside you and Daniel, have meant more to me than I can properly express." Willow's eyes widened, her lips parting slightly as she realized where the conversation was heading. "I've grown to care for you both deeply," Wade continued. "More than care. And I've hoped that perhaps you might feel something similar." "Wade," Willow began, her voice soft. "I know it hasn't been long since you lost your husband," he hurried on. "And I would never presume to replace him in your heart. But I believe we could build a good life together, you, me, and Daniel. A family." Willow was silent for a long moment, her eyes brimming with emotion. "I never expected to feel this way again," she admitted finally. "After Daniel died, I thought that part of my life was over. I would be a widow, a mother, nothing more." Wade waited, hardly daring to breathe. "But then you came," she continued, reaching out to take his hand. "On the worst night of my life, in the middle of a storm. And you stayed. You helped me bring my son into the world. You've been here every day since, building this ranch, building a future." "Is that a yes?" Wade asked, hope rising in his chest. Willow's smile was like the first warmth of spring after a long winter. "Yes, Wade Zimmerman. I believe we could build a wonderful life together." The kiss they shared then was gentle at first, tentative with the newness of acknowledged feelings, then deepening with the promise of all that was to come. Daniel stirred between them and they broke apart, laughing softly. "He approves, I think," Wade said, stroking the baby's cheek. Willow's eyes shone with happiness. "He's always known you belonged with us." 2 weeks later, on a clear Sunday morning, Wade and Willow were married in the small church in Rawlins. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, attended by the few friends they'd made in the area and presided over by a circuit-riding preacher who happened to be passing through town. Willow wore a dress of pale blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes, with wildflowers in her hair. Wade, unusually nervous, had purchased a new shirt for the occasion and polished his boots until they shone. Daniel, dressed in his best gown, was held by a neighbor during the ceremony, gurgling happily as if he understood the significance of the day. "Do you, Wade Zimmerman, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the preacher asked. Wade looked into Willow's eyes, seeing there all the promise of the future they would build together. "I do," he said firmly. "And do you, Willow Foster, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Willow squeezed Wade's hands. "I do," she answered, her voice clear and certain. "Then, by the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Wade drew Willow close, sealing their vows with a kiss that spoke of devotion and partnership, of shared dreams and mutual respect. That evening, after Daniel had been put to bed, Wade and Willow stood on the porch of their cabin, now their home in every sense, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson. "Mrs. Zimmerman," Wade said, testing the sound of her new name, "has a nice ring to it." Willow leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his arm. "It does indeed, Mr. Zimmerman, though I suppose we'll need to change the brand for the double F," Wade chuckled. "Double Z just doesn't have the same appeal. Besides, Foster was the name that started this ranch." "It should remain in honor of Daniel." Willow looked up at him, her expression tender. "You're a good man, Wade. Daniel would have liked you, I think." "I hope so," Wade said sincerely. "I promised to raise his son with the same values and dreams he would have." "Our son," Willow corrected gently. "In every way that matters now," Wade nodded, humbled by her trust in him. "Our son, and maybe someday brothers or sisters for him." Willow's smile held a hint of mischief. "I'd like that very much." They sealed this new promise with another kiss. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky above the Double F Ranch, a place that had become, against all odds, a true home for both of them. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys to the Zimmerman family. The Double F Ranch grew steadily, expanding from the original small herd to over 100 head of cattle by the end of the first year of their marriage. Wade hired 2 reliable cowboys as promised, building a bunkhouse and establishing a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock. Willow proved to be not just a capable ranch wife, but a shrewd business partner, keeping meticulous accounts and suggesting improvements that increased their profits. Her vegetable garden expanded to provide much of their food, and she began selling preserves and baked goods in Rawlins during the monthly supply runs. Daniel thrived under their care, growing into a sturdy toddler with his mother's blue eyes and a curiosity that kept them constantly on their toes. He took his first steps holding Wade's fingers, spoke his first words, Ma and Pa, in the same week, and developed a special affinity for the ranch horses that suggested he would follow in his stepfather's footsteps as a horseman. In the spring of 1878, Willow discovered she was expecting their first child together. The news brought joy to the entire household, especially Wade, who found himself unexpectedly emotional at the prospect of fatherhood. "Are you happy?" Willow asked as they lay in bed one night, her hand guiding his to rest on her still flat stomach. "More than I can say," Wade answered honestly. "I never thought I'd have this, Willow. A home, a family, a purpose beyond the next job or the next town." "You were meant for this life," Willow told him. "I saw it in you that very first night when you delivered Daniel. The way you stayed calm, the care you took with both of us. You were always meant to be here." Wade pulled her close, overwhelmed by gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought him to her door during that stormy night. "I love you, Willow Zimmerman. You and our children are everything to me." As Willow's pregnancy progressed, the ranch continued to prosper. Wade invested in better breeding stock, and their reputation for quality beef spread throughout the territory. By summer, they were discussing the possibility of building a larger home to accommodate their growing family. "Nothing extravagant," Willow insisted. "Just another bedroom or two, and perhaps a proper parlor for entertaining." Wade agreed, secretly planning additional features to surprise her: a larger kitchen with built-in cabinets, a covered porch wrapping around the house, and most importantly, a nursery adjacent to their bedroom. Construction began in August, with Wade hiring carpenters from Rawlins to work alongside him. The original cabin would become a guest house, preserving the place where their life together had begun. On a crisp October evening, as golden leaves drifted from the cottonwoods along the creek, Willow went into labor with their second child. Unlike Daniel's dramatic entry into the world, this birth proceeded smoothly, with the doctor arriving in plenty of time and everything prepared. Wade paced outside the bedroom as he had been instructed to do, Daniel sitting solemnly on the porch step beside him. At 3 years old, the boy understood something important was happening but couldn't grasp the specifics. "Is Mama sick?" he asked, his small face creased with concern. Wade sat beside him, pulling Daniel onto his knee. "No, son. Your mama's bringing your new brother or sister into the world. It's hard work, but she's strong. Remember how Daisy the cow had her calf last spring?" Daniel nodded, his expression clearing. "The baby's in Mama's tummy like the calf was in Daisy's." "That's right," Wade confirmed, amazed as always by the boy's quick understanding. "And soon you'll be a big brother." "I want a brother," Daniel declared firmly. "Sisters are no good for riding horses." Wade chuckled. "Don't let your mama hear you say that. She's one of the finest horsewomen in the territory." Before Daniel could respond, the bedroom door opened and the doctor emerged, smiling broadly. "Congratulations, Mr. Zimmerman. You have a fine, healthy son." Wade's heart leaped. A son. And Willow. "Doing splendidly. She's asking for you both." Wade lifted Daniel into his arms and entered the bedroom where Willow reclined against pillows, her face tired but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as they approached, her smile warming Wade from the inside out. "Come meet your brother, Daniel," she said softly. Wade set Daniel carefully on the edge of the bed, keeping a supportive arm around him as the boy peered curiously at the red-faced newborn. "He's so small," Daniel whispered, reaching out to touch a tiny hand that immediately curled around his finger. The boy's eyes widened in delight. "He's holding my finger, Pa. Look." "He knows his big brother," Wade said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked to Willow, who was watching the interaction with tears of joy in her eyes. "What shall we name him?" she asked. Wade and Willow had discussed names but hadn't settled on a final choice. Now, looking at his son, Wade knew exactly the right name. "Thomas," he said, "after my father." "Thomas Wade Zimmerman." Willow nodded, approval shining in her eyes. "Thomas it is. Daniel and Thomas Zimmerman, the future of the Double F." Wade leaned down to kiss her, then gently took the baby into his arms, marveling at the perfect little features and the strong grip of those tiny fingers. He'd helped bring one son into the world during a storm, and now he held another his by blood with the same sense of wonder and overwhelming love. "Welcome to the world, Thomas," he murmured. "You've got quite a family waiting for you." As 1880 dawned, the Double F Ranch had become one of the most respected operations in Carbon County. The new house stood proudly on a small rise overlooking the original cabin, a two-story structure built of locally milled lumber with a wide porch and ample windows that caught the morning light. Willow's garden had expanded into a small orchard, with apple and cherry trees beginning to bear fruit. A new barn housed 12 horses, including 2 fine breeding mares purchased from a Kentucky dealer who had ventured west, seeking new markets. The cattle herd numbered over 200 head, and Wade employed 5 full-time hands plus seasonal help during roundup. Daniel, now 6, had started school in Rawlins, staying with a trusted family during the week and returning home on weekends. Though Willow missed him terribly, she recognized the importance of education, something she and Wade agreed would be available to all their children. Thomas, at 2, was a sturdy, mischievous toddler who followed Wade everywhere, demanding to help with chores and begging for rides on his father's horse. He had Wade's hazel eyes and determined chin, but Willow's gentle nature and ready smile. Their family expanded again in the summer of 1881 with the birth of Emma Rose, a delicate beauty with a shock of dark hair and her mother's blue eyes. Wade, who had secretly hoped for a daughter, was completely besotted from the moment the midwife placed her in his arms. "She's perfect," he whispered to Willow, who watched with tired satisfaction from the bed. "Absolutely perfect." "Of course she is," Willow agreed. "She's ours." The boys were initially disappointed by the arrival of a sister rather than another brother. But Emma quickly won them over with her sweet disposition and the adoring gaze she fixed on her brothers whenever they entered the room. "She's not so bad for a girl," Daniel conceded after Emma giggled delightfully at his funny faces. "I suppose we can keep her." "Very generous of you," Wade said dryly, ruffling his oldest son's hair. "I'm sure Emma appreciates your approval." As the children grew, so did the ranch and its operations. Wade expanded into horse breeding, using his knowledge of bloodlines and conformation to develop stock that became sought after throughout the territory. Willow started a small dairy, producing butter and cheese that commanded premium prices in Rawlins and even as far as Cheyenne. Their partnership, in business as in life, remained strong, built on mutual respect, shared values, and a love that had deepened with each passing year. They faced challenges together: drought seasons that threatened the herd, a bout of fever that swept through the community claiming several lives, though mercifully sparing their family, and the occasional conflict with rustlers hoping to profit from the double FTK's success. Through it all, they never forgot the night that had brought them together, the stormy evening when a drifting cowboy had found himself delivering a widow's baby, speaking those simple words that had changed both their lives. "I'm here." On a warm summer evening in 1886, as they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary with a gathering of friends and neighbors, Wade found Willow standing alone on the porch, gazing out at the ranch that had grown beyond either of their initial dreams. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Zimmerman," he said, slipping his arm around her waist. Willow leaned against him, fitting as perfectly against his side as she had on their wedding day. "I was just thinking about how different my life might have been if you hadn't knocked on my door that night." Wade nodded, having had the same thought countless times over the years. "Providence has a way of steering us where we need to be, I suppose." "Indeed it does," Willow agreed, "though I suspect Providence had some help from that storm." Wade chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Are you happy, Willow, with this life we've built?" She turned in his arms to face him, her eyes reflecting the same steadfast love he felt in his own heart. "Happier than I ever imagined possible, Wade. This ranch, our children, what we've accomplished together, it's more than I dared to hope for when I first came west." "Me too," Wade admitted. For a man who spent years avoiding roots, I've planted myself pretty firmly here. Any regrets?" Willow asked, though her smile suggested she already knew the answer. Wade shook his head. "Not a single one. Though I do wonder sometimes what became of that drifter who couldn't stay in one place longer than a season. Seems like a different man entirely." "He is a different man," Willow said softly. "He's a husband, a father, a rancher respected throughout the territory. He's the man he was always meant to be." Inside the house, their guests laughed and talked, the sounds of celebration drifting through the open windows. Their children played in the yard. Daniel, now 12, and showing signs of the man he would become. Thomas, 8 and already a skilled horseman. Emma, 5 and determined to keep up with her brothers. And the youngest, James, a toddler of 2 with his father's adventurous spirit. The Double F Ranch stretched around them, a testament to hard work, vision, and partnership. Cattle grazed in the distance, horses moved restlessly in the corral, and the last rays of the setting sun gilded everything in golden light. Wade pulled Willow close, overwhelmed with gratitude for the twist of fate that had led him to her door. "I love you, Willow Zimmerman. Thank you for giving me a home." "And I love you, Wade Zimmerman," she answered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "Thank you for staying when I needed you most." As twilight deepened into night, stars appeared in the Wyoming sky, the same stars that had witnessed their beginning on that stormy night 10 years before. Below, the lights of the Double F Ranch glowed warm and inviting, a beacon of home and family in the vast wilderness of the West. For Wade and Willow Zimmerman, the journey that had begun with a knock on a cabin door during a storm had led to a life richer and more fulfilling than either could have imagined. Their love, born in a moment of crisis and nurtured through years of partnership, had become the foundation upon which they'd built not just a successful ranch, but a legacy that would endure for generations to come. And it had all started with those simple words that changed everything. "I'm here."